North Dakota governor and former 2024 Republican presidential candidate himself, Doug Burgum. Governor, it's always a pleasure to see you. Thanks so much for being here. I know you were at that fundraiser at Mar-a-Lago last weekend. Tell us about it in terms of what you got from the donors. Do you see a change, a pivot toward President Trump?
Well, good morning, Maria. And first of all, Joe Biden's got it completely wrong. I mean, this is not about Scranton. The workers in Scranton are supporting President Trump. Maybe the union bosses are supporting him, but that fundraiser, the Manhattan and Hollywood thing they had in New York with Joe Biden, I mean, there were no cops and firefighters on stage. As a matter of fact, you know, President Trump was with a family of fallen officers while they're having that soiree. And the event that happened in Florida a week ago Saturday, that was all about job creators. The people that are in that room were people that have built companies in America that are building the things that Americans need. They're the people that are working to keep inflation down when Joe Biden is driving it up.
Yeah, it's interesting because, you know, Joe Biden likes to play, you know, Amtrak Joe. And meanwhile, we're getting all of this information from the House Oversight Committee that he and his family has accepted millions of dollars from foreign adversaries. And he's acting like, you know, he had nothing to do with it. We don't know if this is true, but the House Oversight Committee wants him to get in there and answer questions.
Well, absolutely, and foreign influence. I mean, it's that whole thing is crazy. But I think again back to the way this election is shaping up. I mean, part of the reason why President Trump is leading in the polls is because people understand that America was better off and more prosperous when he was in office, and Joe Biden's trying to sell a story that somehow the economy is stronger, inflation is down. I mean, none of that's actually true, and everybody knows that they were better off when President Trump. The world was safer, and there was more money in their pocketbooks.
Are you expecting to be part of the Trump ticket?
President Trump has got so many great options. There's so many wonderful people that are supporting him. I'm still the current governor of North Dakota. The most important thing I can do for the people of North Dakota, the most important thing I can do for this nation is because if you're someone who puts food on the table, gas in your car, pays for your rent, or is got to pay for electricity, which is up 13 times under President Biden, inflation through the roof. The thing that I can do the most for this country right now is make sure that President Trump is elected, and that's what we're focused on.
Well, I want to get back to North Dakota in a moment, but what's your take on the Trump campaign calling for additional presidential debates? And for those debates to start earlier than the initially proposed debate commission saying September. I mean, if you're going to start debating one-on-one in September, you probably are too late to speak to everybody. People will have already voted before the November election. That's why President Trump put this message out on Truth Social yesterday. Watch this.
It's time for crooked Joe Biden, the worst president in the history of the United States, and I to debate. We have to talk about what he's doing and where we're going. We owe it to our country. We owe it to all Americans. Anytime, anywhere, any place.
Mr. President, Donald Trump is ready to debate you right now. Do you accept?
Will you debate him?
If I were him, I'd want him to debate me too.
President Biden answered by saying, if I were him, I would want to debate me too. Fox News poll finds just about 2/3 of voters think it is important that Biden and Trump debate, Governor.
Well, Maria, you make a great point at the opening, which is by the time these debates would happen, 13 million Americans could have already voted. Joe Biden's trying to play this from the basement, just like he did last election. I had an opportunity to be with President Trump last night. The guy totally has his game on. Again, with a group of job creators last night, listening, digging in, asking questions, trying to solve America's problems, doing it for all the right reasons. I mean, Joe Biden, I mean, the contrast, anyone that's had a meeting with President Biden understands that the difference between these two individuals right now is such a stark contrast. American voters need to see that before they vote, and so there should be more debates, and they should be earlier.
Yeah. FBI Director Christopher Wray, meanwhile, facing questions about Biden's wide-open border policies. I want to get your take on the impact of North Dakota. Here's Christopher Wray. Watch this.
Can I just get a simple yes or no response to this question? Does the open border policy make your job easier or harder? Are we safer or less safe as a result of the open border policy?
I have been consistent over the years, frankly, in citing my concerns about the threats that emanate from the border.
Okay.
And as to the long narrative that you went through at the beginning, needless to say, I disagree very strongly with any number of aspects of it.
We keep hearing how dangerous the open border is. What are they doing about it, Governor? Are you seeing the impact in North Dakota?
Well, absolutely, Maria. Of course, we're a big border state on the northern border. 20% of these illegal crossings are now coming across the northern border, but we've had troops down on the southern border. I've been to the southern border more than Joe Biden. It just keeps getting worse and worse. A sector that I was at just recently, there had been over 20,000 crossings just from China in a 30-mile segment just since October 1st. And so Christopher Wray, his job is getting harder. The threats to America are greater, but it's because of Joe Biden's open border process and the number of countries, 140 different countries, people coming in, people on the terrorist watch list. We know that the lowest number of crossings in modern history were under President Trump when he left office. And if you look at the chart of those illegal crossings, what are we, 15 million people have come across? Think of a second Joe Biden term. What would we have, 30 million, 40 million? I mean, when is it going to stop, Maria? And the only way it is when President Trump is elected.
And now the leading group crossing over the southern border is from China. Governor, you just mentioned it, these Chinese nationals. What do you think they're doing here? It's obviously a long hike to come through the southern border from China, but they're doing it, and many of whom are doing it without detection. And they're all appearing to be, men in their fighting age.
Well, and Maria, some of these guys aren't walking. I mean, there's, video of Chinese crossing in across the southern border, and they're pulling roller bags and neck pillows. These folks, they fly from China to Ecuador where they don't need a visa. Then they fly to one of the border cities like Nogales, Mexicali, or Tijuana, and then they pay somebody $5,000 to drive them in an SUV to a hole in the wall, and they walk into the country. And so they're not hiking through the Darien Gap for 9 months. And this is all known information that this is happening. But it's an atrocity every day. Every state is a border state. We've lost over 330,000 Americans to overdose deaths since Joe Biden took office. That's more than 5 Vietnams worth of deaths. So we're in a Cold War with China. We're in a cyber war every day with China, and now we've got, in addition to this mass invasion, now we're taking mass deaths because of the fentanyl that's coming from China.
Yeah, and I wouldn't call them overdose deaths, by the way, Governor. I mean, these people did not say, I want to go get fentanyl and let me overdose on it. They were poisoned. Let's face it. They're thinking that they're taking something else. Everything's laced.
Yes.
These are poisonings coming from China.
Yes, agree completely.
Governor,
Fentanyl poisonings.
Yes, Governor, good to see you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Maria.
Burgum joining us. Good to see you, as always, in North Dakota. Quick break.